Hi, I'm Elizabeth Liz Machette. Welcome to my channel. And today is the astrology forecast for April 2026. My friend and fellow astrologer Justin Crockett Elzy is joining me today. Welcome, Justin. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good, Liz. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to talk about April for everybody.
Yes, we're shifting a month. The time is just zooming by. It's like, wow, we're already into April.
Yep, yep.
So, Justin Crockett Elzy is an archetypal and Jyotish astrologer, teacher, author, and seer. The best way to contact him is justin.lz@gmail.com. I'm an astrologer, author, intuitive, and my website is alightpath.com. And we're in the month of April, and I took this picture a few days ago from my deck when the sun was rising, so it felt
Hmm.
appropriate for April. And the month of April, we're in the fire element, which is action. It's the cardinal modality of create and initiate. The ruling planet is Mars. The mantra is I am. And a few keywords are independence, initiating, pioneering, brave, courageous. And some cautions are aggressive, impulsive, and controlling. Would you like to add anything, Justin?
Innovative, um, impulsive. Well, we have that there. Direct, assertive, um, me focused. A little Aries can be a little bit me focused or individuality focused. And Aries as a sign in general is learning how in this lifetime how they defining of self, how they it's all about self identification and defining of self. So when we see um, Chiron in Aries, Chiron, the wound of Aries, we sometimes see people that could have issues with self esteem, self assertiveness, or not being valued. Their self value or self worth is not valued, or they. It's interesting too. I might point this out. This is interesting. I've had several situations where um, a person has a child who has Chiron and Aries, and they're trans, and so it can also mean that they're changing or redefining self in this lifetime with Chiron and Aries. So it's all about Aries are learning about individuality and self. So just thought I'd add that.
Thank you
My
for adding that.
experience.
Yeah, good. So, I always like to look at the chart for April, the first day of the month at midnight. So, April 1st. So, we have the moon phase is a gibbous phase, which 7 hours later is a full moon, but it's still at that gibbous phase. It hasn't made the full moon phase. And that's about adaptability, analyzing and reflecting. The moon's at 2 degrees Libra. The ascendant is at 0 degrees of Sagittarius, and the midheavens at 21 Virgo. So now we're going to talk about the Sabian symbols for April 1st. The Sabian symbols were channeled in 1925 by Elsie Wheeler, and Mark Edmund Jones assisted her. Mr. Jones believed Elsie had tapped into the ancient mind matrix, and there's one Sabian symbol for each of the 360 degrees of the zodiac, and they call them pictures, but they're a saying that makes up some kind of a saying or a picture. So we're going to look at 3 degrees of the Sabian symbol, the degree leading up to, the degree of, and the next degree. So what becomes before. So we're going to start with Aries 10. Justin, can you start us?
Sure. Aries 10 is a teacher gives new symbolic forms to traditional images. And the keynote here is just sort of where we're talking about a revision of our attitude at the beginning of a new cycle of experience. So it can be abstraction and emotional allegiance, sort of how we approach new cycles and how much do we hold on to the old and how much are we willing to let go into the new.
And then Aries 11 is the ruler of a nation, or it could be a country. And the keynote is power, from format integration of the collective desire for order. The key phrase is centralization of power. Justin, can you do the next one?
Yeah, and then Aries 12, what we're moving towards is a triangularly shaped flight of wild geese. We always see that in the spring sign and then in the fall. An idealistic reliance upon a mental image of universal order, and its cosmic order is the key phrase here.
So, how would you sum these three up?
Well, you know, we know that Aries is the beginning of the zodiac new year. So I think it just feels like we're moving into a new cycle as we move into Aries. And I think that's where we get with this. Teacher gives new symbolic form to traditional images as we move into a new cycle. But also, Aries tends to highlight leaders and power and war. And so I think that as we get there, that Aries 11 kind of talks about how Aries is also about self power, and a strong Aries energy likes order or structure. And I think that's what we're seeing here with the sun 11 degrees as we move into the month. And it shows that it's going to be a month focused a lot on rulers, dictators, maybe rulers, and some type of reorganization of the order.
Thank you, Justin. So now we're going to look at the Sabian symbols for the moon at 2 degrees Libra. So we'll start with Libra 1. In a collection of perfect specimens of many biological forms, a butterfly displays the beauty of its wings, its body impaled by a fine dart. The keynote is immortal archetypal reality that a perfect and dedicated life reveals. And the key phrase is made sacred.
And Libra 2 is the transmutation of the fruits of past experiences into the seed realizations of the forever creative spirit. So here we see a keynote, or what they're talking about here is a repolarization of inner energies leading to a creative centralization of consciousness. So we have kind of like more focusing on one thing, and so it's centralizing our creative energies.
And then Libra 3, the dawn of a new day reveals everything changed. The keynote, the ever present possibilities of beginning anew on a new foundation of values. So the key phrase is innovator. And will you sum these three up, Justin?
Well, I think again, this just as we look at, because it's opposing sign, not necessarily the same degrees opposing, but it definitely is almost like an opposition, right? And so I think this just highlights as we move into this new cycle of focusing on our creativity, and it opens up new opportunities for innovation.
Thank you. So, out of bounds this month, we have the moon from April 6th to the 10th and the 20th to the 23rd. And when a planet is out of bounds, it is exceeds 23 degrees and 27 minutes north or south. And that planet acts on its own. So, um, the moon will be the only planet out of bounds this month for a few days. Planets that are moving into new signs for the month of April. On the 9th, we have Mars moving into Aries. On the 14th, Mercury moves into Aries. On the 19th, the Sun moves into Taurus. The 23rd, Venus moves to Gemini. And on the 25th, Uranus moves to Gemini, and Pallas Athena moves to Aries. And then planets stationing retrograde or direct for April, we have on the 10th, Pholus is stationing retrograde in Capricorn, only one point, which is a centaur, right?
Yeah, Pholus is one of the three centaurs. For those people that are just learning astrology, of course, you already know this, but there's three centaurs that are mentioned in Greek mythology above the herd of all the half man, half horses, and that's, of course, Chiron, Pholus, and Nessus. And Pholus is, in astrology, in my experience and studies, it represents, it's an agitator, and it represents a sudden, uncontrollable change. It's outside our control. So whenever it hits something, it'll tend to bring about sudden change.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I've broke it down to weeks or parts of weeks. So April 1st to the 5th. On the 1st, we have the full moon in Libra. On the 3rd, Venus in Taurus squares Pluto in Aquarius. And on the 5th, Sun in Aries squares Jupiter in Cancer. So go ahead and tell us about those squares, Justin, please.
Well, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. I think, the thing that gets that I think points out with the Venus and Taurus, because we know Venus rules Taurus, so it likes that comfortability, it likes that safety and security. But what we see here, because it's squaring the air sign of Aquarius and Pluto there, which is a disruptor, this means that, and Venus represents our desires. This means that there's going to be something outside of our control, because that's what Pluto does. It changes. So there could be things that disrupt our sense of safety, security, especially when it comes to money and resources, because it's Venus and Taurus. So I think this is kind of representative of what we're seeing with the economy. Um, and the rising of prices, gas prices, and inflation. And so I think if I was looking at this and this was in my chart, I'd say, I need to watch my money. And maybe we may not all have all our material desires met. We may have to cut back a little bit there. So, but it's outside our control because it's Pluto. And then the Sun in Aries square Jupiter in Cancer. Of course, I'm a Cancer, so this is kind of interesting. Whenever we have a fire sign square a water sign, it creates steam, and so it's an emotional uh, tension. So the Sun in Aries wants to be impulsive and wants to do something now, but that Jupiter in Cancer wants that safety and security and that nest egg before it goes out and creates something new or impulsive. So there can be some tension here between our need for safety and security again, and the need to impulsively do something on the fly. But because it is Jupiter, I do think that this means that there'll be some people in the collective that go off on their own and do things and not really bounce it with everybody else, because the Jupiter and Cancer being that the familial family kind of energy. What do you think about these?
Well, I'm gonna talk to the Sun square Jupiter first. It's like, um, I would say, like, I mean, yes, that Sun wants to move. It wants to make a change. It wants to get going, but considering your circumstances around safety, security, your family, you might need to just slow it down a little bit, or they might not be happy with you if you do something that they feel is erratic, perhaps. And then that Venus square Pluto, it's also in the forefront could be issues around women.
Hmm.
Um, and you could crave sugar. Venus now this month, or just a few days ago, ingressed into Taurus of its desired sign, its natural sign, and so it likes to be there. It was debilitated in Aries, but now it's in its home sign, so it's more comfortable there. But there could be some kind of power struggle going on. It could be women against other people, that there's a struggle going on, or people that are in power. So,
Yeah.
and now we're gonna go look at the full moon. So we have the Libra full moon at 12 degrees Libra. And it's also, I found somewhere that it's called the pink moon. And we have it square Jupiter in Cancer and Pholus in Capricorn. So that full moon is forming a grand cardinal cross. So I always think of grand crosses is like we're being pulled in several different directions, and it's like, okay, which way do I go? Because it's like I want to do all of them, but I can't do them all at the same time. And then we have a quincunx to Mercury and Vesta in Pisces. So go ahead, Justin.
Well, what really jumps out to me out of this cardinal Grand Cardinal Cross here, is that all the points are in cardinal signs. They're all, it's all, of course it's Cardinal Cross, but I mean it's Cardinal is about a new season and starting something new, right? Birthing something, because we know that cardinal signs are right at the change of every season throughout the year. And so I think it's interesting because the sun opposite the moon in Aries and Libra, which represents self and relationship, and then Pholus, which is bringing some uncontrollable or sudden change, opposite in Capricorn, which is structure and stability, opposite Jupiter in Cancer, which is course, family, but also philosophical beliefs as well, right? Because Jupiter, Jupiter is comfortable in Sagittarius. So I think that it almost feels like we're at a crossroads here, right? We're at a crossroads, and where in our lives we may have to choose between um what we believe and what we want to accomplish, and whether we need to do it ourselves or work with other people. I think this kind of sets up also, again, sort of that new cycle that the Sabians were talking about, some new beginning, but there's some decision that we all have to make. And it may be, and because it's full moon, it's completion of something, but also start of a new cycle. But it may be because Pholus is opposite Jupiter, it brings some sudden event that we all have to make some type of. We're all at a crossroads, basically, with that, and that's what really jumps out to me about that Cardinal Grand Cross. What about you?
Well, and it's on the angles of the chart, so it's, kind of gives it a little bit more strength or power, that cardinal cross. So it's like if you feel like, you're wanting to do too many things that are conflicting, it's just like take a breath, take your time and, maybe prioritize, put things in order, maybe today you can do this one and then a few days later you can do that one, but it will be difficult to do everything at once, but just have patience and it's all gonna shift because that moon moves pretty quick, so, it'll move out of there fast.
Yeah, and I think for me, out of this Grand Cardinal Cross, is actually the Jupiter opposition with Pholos feels like to me is more uh, powerful of this, because it seems like, because Jupiter in Cancer rules children, rules families, rules, it can be our community or friends or family, whatever that family or what we align with. And I think that it's also kind of speaking to that there's going to be some shift there in the structure of what we're seeing as far as, and there may be children's issues that come up more around this time as well, maybe some sudden event. um, yeah, that hopefully it's not horrible, but could be some sudden event that could be positive, could be negative, but it definitely wakes us up to what we're seeing is what we're aligning with family. So and then the quincux with Mercury and Vesta, I don't work with Vesta as much as you do, but I'd be curious what you think about that one.
Well, it's a quincunx is an adjustment, so our emotions and how we communicate might not be exactly lining up is what I'm gonna say. It's like they're make sure, confirm with people how you're communicating, that you understand them, they understand you, or maybe your emotions are a little high or shifted a little bit, and it's, maybe, if you can, try not to say things that you'll regret, but sometimes we can't avoid that, but, you know how to say you're sorry or I made a mistake. And,
Yeah.
I think you're right about the Jupiter, because here for the West Coast of the United States, that Jupiter is at the top of the chart, so that's gonna be very prominent about nurturing and safety and security. and children.
Yeah.
So April 6th through the 12th. On the 9th, we have Mars moving into Aries, and on the 12th, Mars conjoins Neptune in Aries. So what would you like to say?
Well, I think, and we talked about this offline, and I'll bring it up here. I think we really have to watch what Mars is doing this year. Of course, I think it's a big indicator. Mars in Aries, a big indicator of why we're in a war. And the fact that, and we'll see on the next slide, I think it's on the next week or the week after, that it actually then hits Saturn, because I think we're going to see some shift in the war, because the Mars hitting Neptune, which represents the collective, so it may expand, but also more people get involved maybe in trying to end it, and then of course when Mars hits Saturn, you know, it can represent more courage, because Mars and Saturn can be conjuncting, can be courage and strength, but at the same time, it means that we can commit to something deeper, and and uh, and hopefully we don't commit to the war deeper. But it is actually in personal charts, I think right now is a really great time for people to start businesses in the collective, because the Mars conjunct Neptune, so starting something new in the collective, especially if they're an artist with Neptune being there, and I'm starting to see that, and a lot of people are starting new things right now because of the in Mars in Aries, and it's hitting these other two planets. What about you?
Well, yeah, and with that Mars conjoining Neptune, Neptune rules the sea. So, I mean, we kind of do have war at sea because there's that strait that they don't want anybody to travel with their boats on, and other areas of the ocean. So maybe around that time it'll get a little more heated, but I think it'll calm down after that. But we'll see. So then April 13th through the 19th. On the 13th, Mars conjoins Neptune, but I think I had that on the page before. On the 14th, Mercury enters Aries. The 16th, Sun conjoins Chiron in Aries, and Mercury conjoins Neptune. On the 17th, we have a new moon in Aries at 27 degrees. On the 19th, the Sun ingresses into Taurus, and Mars conjoins Saturn in Aries.
Wow. So again, I'm going to bring up the work, because that's what Aries is about, right? The warrior, and this huge indicator. I think Mercury moving into Aries. I think you kind of mentioned this earlier when we were talking about Mercury. It can be very direct. So watching how as Mercury moves into Aries, we may feel more of that fiery energy and how we're wanting to express ourselves. So we kind of have to watch our communications. Great time to start a new book, or launch a book, or some type of communication, business or project, because it's in Aries. And yeah, I would just say that.
Well, and it's like, the middle of the month, we have a lot of planets in Aries. So, the energy is very, very strong Aries because we have a lot going on there. So it's like really trying to initiate. So I think, yes, starting new projects and new businesses is a really good idea. Then we have the Aries new moon at 27 degrees Aries, and the moon aspects are it immediately the moon goes void, of course, so that means it's not making contact with other planets. But at that conjunction, it conjoins Sun, Eris, and Chiron all at once. So, we've had these big pileups in Aries. So, do you want to talk about that conjunction?
Well, I think the Sun joining Chiron there again. It highlights how much we value individuals and value people, and I think that's just something to be aware of, and being kind to people during this harsh time of Aries energy, and that can be a little bit abrupt maybe at times, but it can also be very sensitive, so and empathetic. So I think it's just something to be aware of, how we're being kind to others and compassionate at this period of time.
Well, and some wounds that maybe you've had that you thought maybe you healed might come to the surface at this time too, so treat yourself with kindness and others with kindness too.
Yep.
And then April 20th through the 30th, on the 20th, Mercury conjoins Saturn and Mars. On the 23rd, Venus enters Gemini. On the 25th, Uranus enters Gemini. And on the 26th, Mercury in Aries squares Jupiter in Cancer. Go ahead.
Well, that Mercury, which is communications, when it hits Mars, it wants to express itself, and with Saturn there, so we may see more people arguing. We may see a lot more um, um, kind of ego beating one's chest type of stuff, but I think it's a time really where, again, we need to kind of watch how we're communicating with others, and that we actually pay attention to others feelings, because that's the opposite, Libra. So always think about the other person as we're communicating. Again, great time for starting new things. And then as Venus moves into Gemini, I think this again highlights moves from Taurus into Gemini again, and then of course Uranus moving into Gemini again. I think this is a really important communicative period, that we're moving through this Aries and a little bit of Taurus into Gemini energy now, right at the beginning of new starts with communication, launching things communication wise, or information as well, and learning, because of Mercury where it's at. So Mercury in Aries likes to start new things and learning as well, and innovating, and starting new projects. So
Yeah, we've all been waiting for Uranus to get out of Taurus, and it's finally going to get out of Taurus and go to Gemini. I didn't like being in Taurus
well,
that much.
and of course we know that's a generational thing as well. Those people that are in the 50s are going to be experiencing, early 50s are going to be experiencing Uranus returns, right? Or and Gemini. So it can, Uranus and Gemini, I think, can be a little unfocused. But it can be very unusual communications at this period of time too. So we I'm not saying that we may talk to aliens, uh,
You
but
never
in the
know.
past, when Uranus is in Gemini, there's been leaps and bounds in information technology and communications. So I think we're going to see, like we're about ready to send astronauts around the moon. So we're going to start to see a different expansion of communications in our collective, and technology as well. Of course, we've just seen Meta and go through. They're getting being raked over the coals. So I think we're the Uranus and Gemini. This portion is where we're going to see changes in social media, and yeah, a lot of change in information and social media.
Well, and the information can be coming in really strong and fast, so you might have to sort through it to see what is fact and what is fiction, so to speak.
And if you're a channeler, it's a great time to channel, right?
Yes, absolutely, or write a book. You might write a book quite fast, actually.
Yeah.
And then did you talk about the Mercury square Jupiter? I don't remember.
Um, Yeah, so I think this kind of again is sort of and again sort of a carry on from the sun in Aries squaring the Jupiter in Cancer. So I think it's how sometimes we see how planets go after one another and then squares the same planet, that we in a person's individual life they could come up with a new idea when the sun gets into Aries squaring Jupiter, but maybe not actually communicate it out to people until Mercury squares Jupiter. But I think again, it highlights how we are communicating to other people, and make sure that we're nurturing and kind with our communications.
Thank you. And Justin, I'm gonna let you talk about the moon out of bounds.
Yeah, so you already brought it up for folks that the moon's going to be out of bounds, and of course that's when the moon acts a little bit, can I say, out of bounds basically than it normally would. So with Sagittarius being a fire sign which likes adventure and expansion and growth, that freedom loving nature that it has, it can display a little bit more risk behaviors, and take more risks. But it's also a time when you, if you're really, I'm thinking, Liz, that if you've been having problems getting that trip going, that may need that extra info of the outer bounds to actually make it happen. So there can be a way that you can maybe use some of that energy to, if you've been hitting walls and trying to expand and grow, you might actually feel a breakthrough when the moon gets into Sagittarius and pushes that out of bounds, out of the way. With Capricorn, of course, the stoicism can be gone with displaying, more pent up emotions and less control. And again, there, from a positive standpoint, we can use that energy to break through obstacles that of structure that have been obstructing us, and sometimes breaking through obstacles basically of structure. And then on the April 20th to 23rd with Gemini, mental stimulation overdrive, bringing about anxiety or lack of focus there. But it also can mean, like we were talking with Uranus and Gemini, I mean, like that a lot of overdrive in mental stimulation can mean a lot of new ideas or even solutions to ideas. That moon out of bounds can help bring solutions that have been um, holding us up. And then, of course, Cancer, nurturing nature, can become a little bit more erratic and emotional unsteadiness. So, again, that's a great time where maybe if we've been trying to release emotion and heal something, that working with the moon out of bounds can actually help us break through emotional blocks.
Thank you, Justin. So the planetary themes for the month, Justin's going to lead us through those.
Yeah, so as we talked about Mercury in Aries, it can be, if you have Mercury in Aries, you can be assertive and an innovative thinker. Of course, it represents communications. Venus in Aries is very creative and impulsive desires. And then Mars in Aries is basically self-initiative effort, because that's what Mars is about effort and action. And so a lot of times when people have Mars in Aries, they'll just go and do something and not tell somebody about it. So because it needs to self-initiate and not, by itself. And then, of course, Jupiter in Cancer, we've talked about this because it's actually been in Cancer for quite a while. So there's a family focus, or what we feel like we need to be a part of a family, which also can be a religious institution or any type of institution we feel like that we're part of that family. And then Saturn in Aries is really about assertive identity. And anything you want to add to these?
Well, Venus is also going to move into Taurus.
Mm-hmm.
So, that would be finances, it would be gardening, which, a lot of us are getting ready to, do some spring planting or start a small vegetable garden. And it's very comfortable there. So that's all I want to add. Anything else you want to add?
The Venus, and I noticed that when a person has Venus and Taurus, they have a natural aesthetic for design and structure of things. So they actually can be. It's actually an indicator of fashion. If a
Mhm.
person has Venus and Taurus, a fashion sense. So
And then favorable activities this month. Justin, go ahead.
yeah, so one of the things we look at is we look at the nakshatras, the lunar mansions, which the sun is going to go through this month. And there's themes around that. And so it's going to go through Revati, which is, and the Jyotish is near the end of the zodiac, because the Hindu or Jyotish or Vedic, whatever you want to call it, system is about 23 to 24 degrees behind. But Revanti is actually, so it's ruled by Pushan, who's the one of the solar Vedic deities of travelers and protectors. So it's and wayfarers and animals. Kind of think of Saint Francis of Assisi a little bit there. So that's why it's a great time for traveling. And then Ashwini, which is the beginning of the zodiac, is ruled by the Kamara twins and the healers. So again, that's why healing and medicine issues, or taking medicine, or we're going to maybe see more stuff come up with medicine and health right around this period of time. And those issues can be highlighted in our personal life with healing and treating ailments, and also self and physical improvements. And because the period of time is also auspicious for new beginnings. And then, of course, Bharani, which is the last nakshatra at the end of the month the sun will be going through, is ruled by Yama. Yama is the god of death in Hindu philosophy. And so it's a good time for fasting or purification rites, ending and completing projects. And of course, all of these are very supportive of artistic activities at this time.
Thanks for sharing that with us. So I want to take a moment and thank our audience for joining us. And I want to thank you, Justin, for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm excited. This is an interesting month. I would say, folks, a great time to start new projects. Like you were saying, stuff outside, get outdoors, start new projects. Really see this time as a good time to initiate something for yourself.
And I want to thank those that come and watch at a later date. We appreciate you supporting us. And Justin and I are both consulting astrologers. We have newsletters and YouTube channels, so follow us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Justin, go ahead and tell us about your slide here.
Yeah, you basically covered it. Best way to get a hold of me is through my email. And I do write if you do live on the Olympic Peninsula here in the Pacific Northwest, I do write a weekly horoscope for the Port Townsend Leader newspaper. And check out my YouTube channel, and you can find me also on Liz's YouTube channel as well.
Yes. And Justin has the New Moon Outlook show that I'm a guest on his YouTube channel monthly. So stop by and join us on that. And there's lots of podcasts in the archives and new shows coming each week, 1 to 3 a week. So I look forward to having you join us again. And I want to thank our sponsor, Astro Peregrine Software, an astrology software for Mac and Windows. And you can find out more information at astroperegrine.com. So, where'd it go? Shoot. I lost it for a second. Are you still there, Justin?
Yep, I'm still here. Yep.
I don't know where the camera went. I got to find it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, there it came back. Whew. It disappeared from my screen.
All right.
Thanks again. And we're going to say goodbye for now. Goodbye. And we'll be back in a few days with the full moon. So come and join us. Bye.